If you fear going deep, you will never know how far your soul was meant to travel. Today, let Ibn-e-Arabi remind you, truth doesn't live on the surface, it waits in the depths. They asked Ibn-e-Arabi, where does truth live? He answered, truth lives where fear ends. And today, this message is more relevant than ever, because we're living in a world where most people settle for the surface of life, shallow beliefs, shallow dreams, shallow courage, and then wonder why their hearts feel empty. Ibn-e-Arabi reminds us, you cannot find pearls while standing on the shore. Truth belongs to those who dive deep into themselves, deep into their wounds, deep into their purpose, deep into the mystery of existence. For when a person dares to step into the unknown, something ancient awakens within them. The ocean does not reveal its treasures to those who are afraid of getting wet. Rumi once said, as you start to walk on the way appears, and this is the entire secret. The truth does not come to the fearful. It comes to the seekers who enter the waters before they know how to swim. The fearful stay empty because they cling to their false sense of safety, the illusion that staying on the shore protects them. But the shore only protects you from discovering who you could have become. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish. Why? Because people who dive deep are often judged by those who never left the sand. But judgment doesn't drown you. Fear does. Ibn-e-Arabi teaches, the world is a mirror. You see only what you are willing to see, and this is why depth matters. A shallow heart sees a shallow world. A brave heart sees hidden realities. When you dive deep, you meet yourself, not the version society made, not the version your fears sculpted, but the version your soul has always been calling you to become. And that self is not empty. That self is not weak. That self does not run from truth. It moves toward it. Even when the waters are dark, Nietzsche said, you must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. This is the same message. Your inner storms are not punishments, they are invitations to depth. The ocean becomes clear only after you move through the waves. The fearful stay empty because they never enter the waves. They live safely, but not deeply. They live comfortably, but not consciously. They live protected, but not awakened. But those who dive, they discover that beneath every fear is a door. Beneath every doubt is a direction. Beneath every fall is a rising. Beneath every turbulence is a truth. Ibn-e-Arabi says, God is the ocean into which all rivers return. And this is the heart of the message. When you dive deep, you are not losing yourself. You are returning to the source from which everything was created. And when you stand fearing at the shore, you are running from the very truth you were born to find. So ask yourself today, are you the deep diver, or the shore dweller? Are you entering the mystery, or escaping it? Are you meeting truth, or avoiding it? Because the ocean of truth is open, the pearls are waiting, but only one question remains, will you dive? Truth begins where fear ends, because every layer of fear is actually a veil covering the reality already waiting behind it, and a person spends half of life running from shadows they never stop to examine. Even though the moment you turn toward fear, instead of turning away, the shadow begins to dissolve and you start to see that fear was never a wall, it was only a doorway to understanding. And yet most people live at the edge of their possibilities because fear convinces them that stepping forward is dangerous, when in truth staying still is far more dangerous, because it keeps the soul small and keeps the heart silent and keeps the destiny untouched. And Ibn-e-Arabi reminds us that truth is never given to the passive. Truth comes to the seeker who is willing to walk into the unknown, and it is in the unknown that the real unveiling begins, because the known world is familiar, comfortable, predictable, and that same comfort creates blindness. You cannot see beyond what you already know, and fear holds you exactly there. Fear says, stop here, this is safe. But truth does not live in safety. Truth grows where your breath becomes tense, where your heart beats louder, where your voice shakes a little, because this is the place where you are actually alive. This is the place where transformation begins, and every seeker who walked before you learned the same lesson. that fear appears large only until you walk toward it, and the moment you step 1 inch beyond fear, that inch becomes expansion, that expansion becomes courage, and that courage becomes clarity, and the truth that was hidden suddenly becomes visible because it was never outside you. It was always waiting in the space you refused to enter, and the world trains us to avoid discomfort, to avoid uncertainty, to avoid risk, and the tragedy is that by avoiding these things we also avoid depth, and by avoiding depth we avoid truth, and the one who steps past fear steps into a different realm where life becomes an unfolding instead of a repetition, and this unfolding is the beginning of real awareness, because when you stop letting fear decide what you can or cannot face, you begin to see yourself without filters, without excuses, without borrowed beliefs, and without illusions, and this vision is the beginning of truth, because truth is not a concept, truth is an experience, and the experience only happens in the moment you step beyond fear. And people think courage means the absence of fear, but courage simply means you stopped negotiating with fear and started walking anyway, and every time you walk past fear, you shed a layer of falsehood, you shed a layer of limitation, you shed a layer of identity that never belonged to you, and little by little you meet your own essence, and meeting your essence, the first taste of truth, because the soul was created to expand, not to shrink, and fear shrinks the soul, it closes the windows of perception, it narrows the mind, it freezes the heart, and when the heart freezes, truth cannot enter. But when you challenge fear, the heart melts, the mind widens, and the inner eye opens, and this opening is the beginning of the inner journey, where every step you take inward reveals another layer of meaning, another layer of self, another layer of consciousness, and fear becomes weaker with every step, because fear has no real substance. It is a story your mind repeats until you walk into it and see there was nothing there at all, and truth was always waiting inside the very place you refuse to explore. And because truth requires vulnerability, it requires surrender, it requires stepping beyond the familiar, it can never be reached by those who worship comfort or certainty. And this is why fear and truth cannot coexist. Where fear dominates, truth disappears, and where truth dominates, fear evaporates, and the seeker eventually realizes that the deepest truths of existence, the truths about self, about God, about life, about love, all require one sacrifice: letting fear die. And when fear dies, the soul finally breathes the way it was meant to breathe, and in that breath truth begins to unfold endlessly, without boundaries, without obstacles, without limits, because truth expands exactly as far as courage allows it to expand. It reveals what the surface hides, because everything meaningful in life is layered beneath what the eyes can see and what the mind first understands. And the tragedy is that most people never travel beyond the surface of anything, not of relationships, not of knowledge, not of themselves, and certainly not of the divine, and the surface is shiny, comfortable, predictable, a place where assumptions feel like truth and illusions feel like certainty, and because it feels easy, people stay there thinking they already understand, while the deeper reality sleeps untouched beneath their feet. And Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that the world is a series of veils, each veil disguising another depth, and each depth holding another secret, and only the seeker willing to peel back these veils begins to understand what life was truly hiding. And the surface never tells the real story, because the surface is only the shadow of reality, and a shadow cannot be the true form of anything. And just as the ocean looks flat from above, but hides worlds beneath its skin, a human being also looks simple from outside, but carries a universe within, and this universe does not open for the casual observer, it opens for the one who dives inward with sincerity, intention, and courage. And every depth you explore reveals a new layer of meaning, a new angle of truth, a new fragrance of wisdom. And the deeper you go, the more the world begins to feel alive, because depth awakens perception, and perception awakens consciousness, and consciousness awakens the ability to see what others miss. And this is why the surface thinker remains confused, while the deep seeker finds clarity, because confusion lives where vision is shallow, and clarity lives where perception is deep. And the surface hides the sacred, because the sacred is too powerful, too delicate, too infinite to be held by the shallow gaze. And when you dare to go deeper, the world around you begins to transform, because you are no longer interacting with appearances, You are interacting with essence, and essence where the truth breathes, and every spiritual teaching, every mystical path, every enlightened thinker says the same thing in different words, that reality is not what it seems, and meaning is not where it appears, and understanding is not born from looking, but from seeing, and you see only when you look deeply, and depth begins, not by knowing more, but by questioning deeper, by asking what lies behind, what lies beneath, what lies beyond, and the person who asks these questions begins to feel the layers shifting inside them, because the heart is naturally drawn to depth. The soul is naturally thirsty for depth, the Mindu said, is naturally expanded by depth, and the divine is naturally revealed through depth, and yet people fear going deep, because depth requires honesty, and honesty requires facing the parts of yourself the world teaches you to hide, and this is why most remain on the surface, because on the surface you can pretend, you can escape, you can ignore, you can distract, but in depth you meet the truth without disguise, and that meeting is both terrifying and liberating, and once you taste depth, the surface no longer satisfies, because surface comfort cannot compete with inner knowing, and surface pleasure cannot compete with inner awakening, and surface beliefs cannot compete with inner truth, and the heart slowly turns away from shallow noise and begins to follow the call of the deeper world, the world behind the world, and every time you descend another layer, you shed another illusion, and every illusion removed opens a space for a greater truth, and when enough layers fall away, you begin to see the world as it actually is, not as the ego painted it, not as fear shaped it, not as society instructed it, but as the soul always knew it, and this is the moment when the seeker becomes alive in a way the surface can never provide, because depth does not just reveal hidden truths, it reveals the hidden self, and when the hidden self rises, the world no longer appears shallow, because now you see its depth everywhere, in every moment, in every heart, in every breath, in every unfolding of existence's journey inward is the real ocean, because every outer path eventually leads you back to yourself, and everything you search for outside is merely a reflection of something waiting inside, and Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that the universe within a human is wider, deeper, and more mysterious than the physical universe spread across the skies, and yet people spend their whole lives exploring the world, but never exploring their own depths, never understanding that the greatest truths, the rarest treasures, the purest awakenings lie inside the inner ocean, and this inner ocean is not made of water, it is made of consciousness, memory, longing, intuition, fear, wounds, and divine traces, and each layer of this ocean must be crossed if a person wishes to know who they truly are, and the tragedy is that most people fear themselves more than anything else. They fear sitting alone with their thoughts, they fear facing the truths they have buried, they fear discovering desires they suppressed, they fear meeting the self they abandoned, they fear the depth of their own ocean, because no one ever taught them how to swim in it, and they assume drowning inevitable, when in reality drowning happens only when you resist the water, not when you surrender to it, and the inner journey requires this surrender, a softening, a willingness to float through the unknown parts of your being, without judgment, without control, without running away, and the moment you surrender even slightly, the inner ocean begins to reveal its currents, its rhythms, its hidden islands, and every current you follow takes you deeper toward understanding, and every understanding reveals another layer of the self, and the more you witness this inner world, the more you realize that the outer world has always been a distraction, a reflection, a rehearsal. The outer world tested your patience, but the inner world teaches you its meaning. The outer world broke your heart, but the inner world shows you why. The outer world confused you, but the inner world explains the pattern. The outer world pushed you, but the inner world pulls you, and eventually you learn that your real journey was never about achieving something outside, it was always about discovering something inside, and the mind is the first layer of this ocean, noisy, chaotic, full of thoughts that crash like waves against the shore, and many people stop here thinking the noise is all they are, but this noise is only the surface of the water, and if you sit long enough the waves begin to calm, and beneath them lies a deeper current, the heart, and the heart of the next layer of the inner ocean, full of emotions, memories, love, sorrows, and forgotten desires, and this layer is powerful because the heart remembers truths the mind has long forgotten, but the heart also hides wounds, and these wounds act like storms, and if you avoid them they grow, but if you enter them, they release, and once the storms pass the heart becomes a doorway to another depth. The soul, where the real ocean begins, a vast, silent, limitless expanse that holds your purpose, your direction, your divine connection, your true nature. And when you reach this layer, you begin to see yourself not as a body, not as a name, not as an identity, but as a traveler moving through layers of existence towards something infinite. And the soul is calm, glowing, ancient, and it guides you without speaking, it teaches you without words, it leads you without forcing, and when you feel its presence even slightly, your entire world rearranges, because now you are swimming in the depth of who you are, and in this depth fear disappears, noise fades, illusions dissolve, and clarity begins to shine like pearls resting at the bottom of the sea. And these pearls are your real truths, the truths about why you feel drawn to certain things, why your heart aches in certain ways, why life tested you in certain patterns, why you survived what should have broken you, why you met the people who shaped you, why your soul whispered even when you ignored it, and slowly the inner ocean becomes familiar and you learn to move through it with ease. And once you understand this ocean, you understand life, because life was always a mirror of your inner depth, and when the inner ocean becomes clear, the outer ocean stops frightening you and you walk through the world with a quiet power, because you now carry the depth within you, and nothing on the surface can shake someone who has already met their own depths. Fearful remain empty, because they never begin, and this truth sits silently in every human life like a reminder that possibility belongs only to those who dare to take the first step, and most people never take that step, not because the path is impossible, but because fear convinces them it is, and fear whispers stories that make the heart shrink, stories of failure, of judgment, of loss, of uncertainty. And these stories are so loud that a person chooses stillness over growth and comfort over courage, and the tragedy is that comfort feels safe only in the moment, but becomes a prison over time, a prison that slowly drains the soul until nothing meaningful remains. And Ibn-e-Arabi teaches that stagnation is the death of the spirit, because the spirit was created to move, to seek, to unveil, to expand, and fear is the force that freezes this movement. And when the spirit freezes, the person begins to feel empty, even if their life looks full on the outside, full of possessions, routines, relationships, distractions, but internally hollow, because nothing inside is growing, and growth is the only nourishment the soul recognizes. And those who remain trapped by fear never taste this nourishment, they never reach the depth of their own being, they never discover the truth waiting beneath their fears, and they never experience the transformation that comes from stepping into the unknown, because all transformation begins with a risk, and without risk there is no revelation, and without revelation there is no meaning, and without meaning the heart starves, and emptiness spreads quietly through a life that could have been extraordinary, but instead remains ordinary, because the person allowed fear to make the decisions for them, and fear always chooses the smaller life, fear always chooses the safer path, fear always chooses the surface instead of the depth, and life shrinks to the size of the fear a person obeys. And most people don't realize that the emptiness they feel is not a punishment, but a sign that they were meant for more, meant to attempt, meant to explore, meant to begin, but they didn't, and so nothing began inside them. And when nothing begins, nothing becomes, and everything stays unfinished. The dreams stay unfinished, the potential stays unfinished, the journey stays unfinished, the awakening stays unfinished. And Ibn-e-Arabi says that God does not withhold truth from people. Truth is always available, that fear makes people turn away from it, and because they turn away, they remain empty, not because truth was far, but because they refuse to approach it. And approaching truth requires vulnerability, the willingness to fail, the willingness to be wrong, the willingness to fall, the willingness to change. And fear hates all these things, and so fear teaches the person to avoid experiences that could reveal who they truly are, and by avoiding these experiences they avoid themselves, and the emptiness grows deeper and deeper, because the soul cannot expand in avoidance, it expands only in motion, and motion begins with one step, one attempt, one moment of courage, one decision to face what feels uncomfortable. And every seeker who ever found truth began here, with a trembling heart, a shaking hand, a mind full of uncertainty, but a willingness to start, and that willingness separates the fulfilled from the empty, the awakened from the asleep, the deep diver from the shore dweller, and the difference is never talent, never intelligence, never luck. The difference is always courage, because courage is the bridge between emptiness and fullness, and when a person chooses courage, even small courage, the heart begins to awaken, and when the heart awakens, it pulls the soul forward, and when the soul moves, truth begins to unfold within them, and the emptiness slowly dissolves, replaced by meaning, clarity, purpose, depth, and a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are finally living the life your soul intended, and this fullness cannot be bought, cannot be borrowed, cannot be taught. It can only be discovered by stepping beyond fear and beginning the journey. The fearful never begin, and so they stay empty.